What happens when poverty and family secrets collide? Follow Jesse's journey from a broken RV to a new life filled with hope, unexpected reunions, and the fight to rebuild what was lost. This is a story about survival, forgiveness, and the true meaning of family. When people talk about rock bottom, they usually picture someone losing a job, going bankrupt, or sleeping under a bridge. For me, rock bottom looked like a rusty 1992 Winnebago parked behind a gas station in a town so small, you could drive through it in less time than it takes to microwave a frozen dinner. We weren't camping. We weren't road tripping. We were living there, me, my mom, my little brother Cody, and my older sister Marla. For souls, one cramped space, and a future that felt like it had already given up on us. I was 17, and by then I'd gotten real good at making poverty look invisible. I'd sneak into the high school bathroom early every morning just to sponge bath with hand soap, dry off with paper towels, and change into the least wrinkled shirt I had. I got so used to lying that it stopped feeling like lying. Yeah, my room's a mess, I'd say, when people asked why they couldn't come over. No, we don't have Wi-Fi right now. My mom's car broke down, that's why she couldn't make the parent-teacher meeting. Truth was, we didn't even have a car. The RV was it. Now, you're probably thinking, where was my dad in all this? I asked myself that same question every day. All I knew was that he left when Cody was still in diapers. Mom said he ran off, but whenever she said it, there was this strange mix of anger and guilt in her voice, like there was more to the story. And let me tell you, there was. It all started unraveling one cold Friday morning. I remember because the heater had given out, and Marla had wrapped herself in 3 hoodies and was still shivering like a wet cat. Mom handed me a few crumpled dollar bills and told me to get some cereal and milk from the gas station. Tell the clerk we'll pay the rest tomorrow, she said without looking at me. That tomorrow had come and gone 100 times before. As I was leaving, I noticed something strange. Parked next to the gas station dumpster was a silver Ford Explorer with tinted windows and shiny new tires. Not exactly rare, but in our town, anything newer than 2005 stood out. But it wasn't the car that got me. It was the man sitting inside it. I could only see him for a second, just long enough to catch his profile. But that second was enough to shake me. He looked like me. Exactly like me. Same nose. Same stubborn jawline. Even the way he rubbed his temple, like he was thinking too hard about something. He looked up. Our eyes met for a split second before he started the engine and pulled away. I ran back to the RV, cereal forgotten. Mom, I said, do I look like Dad? She froze. Her lips moved like she was trying to form words, but nothing came out. Finally, she mumbled, you've got his eyes. Did he drive a silver Ford? That's when her whole face changed. Color drained from her cheeks, and her hands started trembling. Why? She whispered. Because I just saw him. Marla dropped the spoon she was using to stir our instant oatmeal. Cody stopped playing with his toy soldier and looked up. For a moment, everything was silent. No wind, no birds, no nothing. Just the sound of our reality cracking like ice under too much weight. Then Mom did something she hadn't done in years. She cried. Not quiet tears either. Big, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. Mom, what's going on? I asked. She finally looked at me with bloodshot eyes and said the words that would change everything. He didn't leave us, Jesse. I told him to go. And not just go. I told him if he ever came back, I'd call the cops. I just stood there, frozen, while her words hung in the air like smoke. You told him to go? Why? I asked. She wiped her eyes on the sleeve of her sweatshirt and sank into the tiny RV bench, the foam cushion long since worn flat. Because I was scared, she said. Of what? I asked, my voice rising. She looked at Marla, then Cody, then back at me. Of what he knew. Of what I did. That was the first time I realized maybe I didn't know my mom at all. She leaned forward, hands trembling, and pulled out a weathered manila envelope from behind the sink. It was taped shut and marked with an old return address from somewhere in Michigan, now faded and unreadable. I was going to burn this a long time ago, she said, but part of me always hoped you'd never ask. She handed it to me. Inside were copies of documents, court letters, birth records, and one thing that made my chest tighten. A check, made out to her. From him. For $50,000. Dated 6 months before he left. You told us he ran off, I said, almost in a whisper. He wanted to buy us a house, she said. He got that job in Michigan and sent me the first check. Said more was coming. But I didn't want to leave. Marla stood up. You didn't want to leave the trailer park? The town with no future? Why? Mom looked down, shame written all over her face. I had debts. Big ones. From before he came back into our lives. I owed some people you kids didn't need to know about. I knew if I cashed that check, they'd come for all of us. So I told him to go. I told him to forget us. She swallowed hard. And he did. I felt sick. We could have had a house. A real roof. Real heat. A kitchen that wasn't 6 square feet. You let us grow up like this, I said. In that storm last year, Cody got pneumonia. Marla almost dropped out of school because she couldn't study in here. You let us go through all of it when we didn't have to. I was trying to protect you, she said weakly. That was the moment something shifted in me. All the excuses, all that we're doing our best speeches, suddenly they rang hollow. I left the RV, walked behind the gas station, just breathing in the cold. That silver Ford, it hadn't just been a coincidence. That man, my dad, he had been checking on us. Watching us. Maybe even waiting for the right moment to step in. And maybe that moment was now. That night, I made a decision. I'd find him. Not for Mom. Not even for me. But for Cody. For Marla. We deserved to know who he really was. I didn't have a phone plan, but I still had my school Chromebook and the gas station had free Wi-Fi. So I sat cross-legged outside at 11 p.m., wrapped in my hoodie, and started searching. His name was common, which didn't help. But I remembered the return address on the envelope said something about a shipping company. That narrowed it down. 3 hours and a lot of digging later, I found him. David Palmer. Warehouse foreman in Michigan. Married once, no other kids. Divorced 5 years ago. Owned a modest house just outside of Lansing. I stared at the contact info on the screen. My fingers hovered over the email address. Then I typed. Hi. My name's Jesse. I think I'm your son. I saw you today at the gas station outside of Prairieville. I don't want anything from you, but I'd like to talk. I hit send before I could stop myself. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my email chiming. One new message. From David Palmer. I've been waiting years to hear from you. Let's talk. I didn't tell Mom I messaged him. Not yet. She was already back in survival mode, boiling water on the camp stove like nothing happened. Marla kept her distance, and Cody, well, Cody was too young to understand the gravity of what had just cracked open around us. But something about that email gave me this weird feeling, like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing you have to jump but having no clue what's at the bottom. Later that day, while Mom was off trying to hustle food stamps at the county office, I borrowed a bike from one of the gas station clerks who took pity on me sometimes. I told him I needed to get to the library 2 towns over. What I didn't tell him was that David, my maybe dad, had agreed to meet me there. When I got to the library, I spotted him right away. He hadn't changed much since the glimpse I caught through the truck window. Same broad shoulders, same dark hair peppered with gray. He stood up when he saw me, awkward like he wasn't sure if he should hug me or shake my hand. We settled for an awkward nod and sat across from each other at a dusty study table. I didn't think you'd actually message me, he said, voice low but calm. I didn't think you'd answer, I replied. He smiled a little. Guess we're both full of surprises. We sat in silence for a minute. Then he said, you probably hate me. I blinked. Honestly, I don't know how I feel. You're a ghost that just became real. He looked down at his hands. I didn't want to leave. I was ready to fight for custody. But your mom, she was determined. She told me, I said, about the check, the debt, all of it. His expression tightened. She never told me why. Just that if I loved you, I'd walk away. Said she'd rather disappear with you than let me drag you into court fights. He looked up at me. I didn't think I had a choice. There was a lump in my throat the size of a grapefruit. I didn't know if I was angry, sad, or just exhausted. But you came back, I said. You were watching us. He nodded. When I heard you were still in that RV years later, I started driving down every few months. Just to see. But I didn't want to make things worse by showing up uninvited. He pulled something from his coat pocket. It was a folded photo, me, Cody, and Marla standing in front of the RV from a year ago. I took this from the road one morning, he said. That's the day I knew I couldn't stay away forever. I stared at the photo. None of us were smiling. We looked tired, beaten. Do you want to come home? He asked. Even just for a weekend? I've got a spare room. You can see where I live. No pressure. Just see for yourself. I didn't even hesitate. Yes. That weekend changed everything. His house wasn't a mansion, but compared to the RV, it might as well have been the Ritz-Carlton. Real walls. Warm water. Food that didn't come from a donation box. He let me shower, sleep in a real bed, and eat without having to count how many slices of bread were left. But what really got me was the photo album. He pulled it from a drawer and handed it to me without saying anything. Inside were baby pictures. Ones I'd never seen. Him holding me in the hospital. Me asleep on his chest. He had kept them all. I turned the page and froze. There was a picture of Mom, smiling, holding me, arm around him. They looked happy. You loved her, I said. More than anything, he said. Until she started hiding things from me. Then I loved you too much to fight her. It was strange. I'd always seen my mom as a victim of poverty. But this complicated everything. I stayed for 3 days. And when it was time to leave, David said something that stuck with me. You don't have to choose right now. Just know that door will always be open. For you. For Cody. Even Marla. When I got back to the RV, Mom was waiting. She must have known. You found him, didn't you? She asked. I nodded. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just looked tired. What did he say? He said the door's open, I replied. For all of us. Mom turned away and whispered, that's what I was always afraid of. After I came back, everything in the RV felt smaller. Tighter. Like the walls were closing in, not just physically, but emotionally. Mom barely spoke to me for 2 days. Marla was somewhere between furious and hopeful. And Cody kept asking why I smelled like laundry detergent instead of smoke and cold air. That Monday, I skipped school. Not because I wanted to, but because something inside me had shifted. I couldn't sit through geometry class pretending I didn't just meet the man whose shadow had hung over my entire life. So I sat behind the RV, staring at the woods and listening to the hum of the highway nearby. That's when Marla joined me. You really met him? She asked. Yeah, I said. And he's not what Mom said. He's not perfect, but he didn't just walk away. She sat next to me, picking at the edge of her jacket sleeve. Do you think she knew we'd find out someday? I don't think she thought that far ahead. We were both quiet for a while. Then she asked something that caught me off guard. Do you think he'd take us all in? I looked at her. She wasn't joking. I think he would, I said. If we wanted that. Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back. I can't do this anymore, Jesse. I can't pretend this is okay. Mom keeps saying she's doing her best, but it's not enough. We're barely surviving. And then she dropped the real bomb. I've been saving up to leave. My head snapped toward her. What? I work at the diner after school, remember? Tips mostly. I've been hiding cash in a tampon box under the sink. Marla. I'm not telling you to come with me, she said. I'm tired. I'm so tired, Jesse. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the RV made me feel like I was stuck in a coffin someone forgot to bury. And then something happened that pushed everything over the edge. We got robbed. Not some dramatic break-in. Just gone. I woke up at dawn. Went to get the little bag I kept my school stuff in, and it was gone. So was Cody's jacket, Marla's tip stash, even our canned food. No broken windows, no mess. Just absence. Mom sat there shaking, saying she must have forgotten to lock the door. But I saw something in her eyes. That same look from when I asked about Dad. She was lying. Again. I pulled her aside while Cody and Marla searched for their things. Who took it? I asked. She stared at me like a deer in headlights. Mom, who did you give it to? She finally whispered. I owed someone. Just a little. I didn't think they'd take it all. I felt something in my chest snap. You stole from your own kids to pay off your mess? Again. Her face crumpled. I didn't know what else to do. I stepped outside. I needed air. I needed anything but that. Marla followed me out. She gave them everything, didn't she? I nodded. That night, we did something that took all the strength we had left. We packed what little we still owned. Marla grabbed her remaining cash. I grabbed Cody's school supplies and my Chromebook. And we walked. We walked 2 miles to the diner where Marla worked, asked her boss for a ride, and took the bus out of town the next morning. We didn't go back. We went to David's. He opened the door and didn't ask a single question. He let us in, gave us blankets, set Cody up on the couch and told Marla she could have the guest room. Then he turned to me and said, "You did the right thing." For the first time in my life, I started to feel something I didn't have a name for. Not happiness. Not safety. Something in between. Something like hope. At first, it felt like we were just visiting. Like any minute now, we'd have to pack up and squeeze back into the RV, where the walls breathed with every gust of wind. But days passed. Then a week. Then 2. And it started to feel permanent. David. Yeah, I'd stopped calling him Dad in my head, not because I didn't want to, but because the word still felt too fragile. He wasn't trying to be our replacement parent. He just showed up. Steady. He enrolled Cody in school. Helped Marla apply to community college. Even drove me to a job interview at the local grocery store without asking a million questions about why I hadn't applied sooner. We weren't rich, but we had food, hot water, quiet nights. Cody was laughing more. Marla was sleeping through the night without waking up from stress. And me? I'd stopped grinding my teeth in my sleep. But the silence didn't last. 3 weeks after we left, Mom showed up. It was a Thursday. Rainy. I was stocking shelves when I saw her out front through the big window, standing under an umbrella that was broken on one side. She looked thinner, more worn down than usual. When I stepped outside, she just looked at me and said, "So this is where you ran to?" I didn't answer right away. I wanted to say, "We didn't run. You pushed us." But she was still my mother, even if she let us suffer. "Why are you here?" I asked. "I came to see if you were alive," she said. "Marla hasn't answered my texts. Cody's school said he transferred." I crossed my arms. "What did you expect?" "I expected my children not to abandon me." That hit a nerve. "We begged you to change," I said. "And every time you promised, you went right back to the same mess. We weren't safe with you anymore." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "Jesse, I made mistakes, but I always tried." "No, you survived. That's different. You survived by letting us go hungry, by lying to us, by throwing our futures into a fire just to buy yourself more time." Her jaw clenched, but she didn't argue. "I miss you," she said. "I miss all of you." For the first time, I realized she wasn't playing a game. She wasn't trying to guilt trip me. She genuinely looked lost. "I miss you too," I admitted. "But I can't go back to that. None of us can." She reached into her coat and pulled out a photo. One of us when I was maybe 5, her, Marla, me, and baby Cody. All of us smiling like we hadn't yet figured out how hard the world was. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said, voice trembling. "But I want to fix what I can." That's when David walked outside. He didn't say anything, just stood beside me. Mom looked at him, her face hardening for a second, then softening. "You were always the better one," she said to him. "I was just too proud to admit it." "I'm not better," David replied. "Just tired of watching kids pay for adult mistakes." She nodded, tucked the photo into my hand, and turned to walk away. But before she reached the sidewalk, she said, "Take care of each other. And if you ever need me, I'm still your mom." Weeks passed. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. Marla still had panic attacks sometimes. Cody cried when it thundered too loud. And I still flinched when someone raised their voice too fast. But we had space. We had choice. David gave us that, not by buying our love, but by never asking us to earn it. One night, as we were cleaning up after dinner, Marla looked over at me and said, "Do you ever think we'll be okay?" I thought about it. Then I said, "We already are. Just in pieces." She smiled. "I can live with that." So could I. Spring came fast that year. Cody was thriving in school. He even made a friend named Eli, who had no idea Cody used to sleep next to a propane heater in a freezing RV. Marla was taking classes at the community college and commuting by bus. She'd started working part-time at a bookstore, and for the first time since we were kids, she'd begun sketching again. And me? I got promoted to assistant shift lead at the grocery store. Not a glamorous job, but every paycheck felt like a victory. We were healing. Slowly. But then, one afternoon in early April, I came home from work to find David sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a letter in his hands like it might explode. He looked up at me and slid it across the table. It was addressed to me, from a law office in town. At first, I thought it was junk mail. Then I saw the name on the bottom corner, Glenda M. Richards, attorney at law. Inside was a brief letter that stopped me cold. To Jesse Palmer, Marla Palmer, and Cody Palmer. "This is to inform you that your maternal grandmother, Edna Walsh, passed away on March 29th. She named the 3 of you as equal beneficiaries to her estate. A small home and a bank account in your names await transfer. Please contact us to schedule an appointment." I hadn't heard Grandma Walsh's name in years. She was Mom's mom, and we'd only seen her a few times growing up. I remembered a quiet woman with thinning gray hair, always watching Mom like she expected her to vanish into smoke. When I told Marla, her mouth dropped open. Grandma left us a house? A house and something in the bank, I said. Where? 2 towns over. Mapleville. That night, we barely slept. We weren't money hungry. We were just stunned. We'd grown up thinking no one in our family had anything. And suddenly, there was a house. A real house. The next week, we visited the law office together. David drove. The house was a small, one-story place on the edge of town. Peeling paint, overgrown bushes, a rusted porch swing. But to us, it was a palace. The lawyer handed us the key and an envelope with the bank details. The account wasn't huge, just under $12,000. But after years of scraping by on pennies and stress, it felt like winning the lottery. As we walked through the house, we found signs that Grandma Walsh had kept track of us. Clippings from the local paper about the school. A picture of Marla's honor roll certificate, cut from a school newsletter. Even a printed photo of me playing JV basketball sophomore year. How she got it, I'll never know. I think she cared more than we thought, Marla said softly. We had a decision to make. Keep living with David, or try to build something new in this house that was technically ours. We talked it over for days. David didn't push us either way. Then Marla said something that tipped the scale. We've been given a clean slate. I think we need to use it. So we did. We moved into Grandma Walsh's house that May. It needed work, badly. The plumbing whined. The floors creaked. The fridge barely cooled anything. But we painted the walls. Fixed what we could. Learned how to use YouTube for repairs and Craigslist for cheap furniture. David still visited every weekend. He helped replace a broken window and even showed Cody how to mow the lawn. Mom came by once too. She stood on the porch, hands in her coat pockets, and just looked at the place. You made something out of nothing, she said. I didn't reply. Just nodded. Before she left, she handed me an envelope with $60 inside. For groceries, she said. I'm trying. It wasn't a happy ending. But maybe it was the beginning of a better middle. That summer, we cooked our first real dinner in a working oven. Marla baked a cake from scratch. Cody rode his bike up and down the street like a kid who had always known freedom. And me? I stood on the porch, looked out at the yard we had weeded by hand, and felt something I hadn't felt since I was little. I felt like I belonged. That summer was the closest thing to peace we'd ever had. Our house might have had peeling paint and patchy wiring, but it was ours. Cody started inviting friends over for backyard campouts. Marla set up an art nook in the corner of the living room, and I found myself actually waking up excited to start the day. For once, survival wasn't the only thing on our minds. But life has a way of digging up things you thought were buried. One Tuesday afternoon, while I was reorganizing the hall closet, I found a box wedged behind the water heater. It was old and dusty, labeled only with a single word, Edna, Grandma's name. Inside, there were letters, dozens of them, stacks tied with faded ribbon. Most were addressed to her. A few were from her. But one pile, thicker than the rest, was marked unsent. To my daughter. My heart pounded. I opened the first one. Dear Marcy, I don't know where you are, but I wish you'd write. I heard from a neighbor you're living out of an RV now. Please come home. There's room here. I can help with the kids. I read another. Marcy, the kids deserve better. Jesse is old enough to start asking questions. Tell him the truth about David. He was a good man. You pushed him away because you were scared of your own shame, not his actions. Page after page told the same story. A mother begging her daughter to come home, pleading to help her grandchildren, offering love, stability, answers. And all of it had been ignored. I couldn't tell if I was angry or heartbroken. Probably both. When I showed the letters to Marla, she went pale. She could have saved us, she whispered. She tried. She did more than try, I said. Mom just shut her out. That night, after Cody went to bed, we sat on the floor of the living room surrounded by the letters. I always wondered why Grandma never visited us, Marla said. I thought she didn't care. She cared too much, I replied. And she didn't know how to break through Mom's wall. Then Marla looked up at me and said something I hadn't expected. I want to meet the rest of our family. I blinked. What family? Mom has a sister. Aunt Jackie. Remember her? We met her once at a funeral when I was like 9. Vaguely, I remembered a tall woman with sharp eyes and a firm handshake. What if she knows more? What if there's a whole piece of our history we've never heard? That weekend, we went looking. Thanks to the letters and a little Facebook stalking, we tracked down Aunt Jackie. She lived in a nearby city and agreed to meet us at a diner on the edge of town. When she walked in, I recognized her immediately. Still tall, still sharp-eyed, but warmer than I remembered. You must be Jesse and Marla, she said, pulling us into a hug. You've grown up into survivors. Over pancakes and bad diner coffee, we talked for 2 hours straight. She told us stories about Mom, before everything. How she used to dream of being a nurse. How she was the funny one at every holiday dinner. How she fell in love too young and never recovered from the consequences. And she told us something else. That David wasn't the only one Mom had pushed away. She pushed all of us out, Aunt Jackie said. We tried. Lord knows we tried. But every time we offered help, she told us we were judging her. Eventually, she just stopped answering. By the end of it, Marla was crying. Not because of regret, but because of grief. Grief for a version of our family that could have been. Grief for the time lost. But Aunt Jackie leaned over and said, You're here now. You're not your mother. And that means you still have a choice. We drove home in silence. When we got back, Cody was watching a movie in the living room, wrapped in a blanket with a bowl of popcorn nearly as big as him. He looked up at us and smiled. You guys okay? I looked at Marla. She smiled through her tears. Yeah, buddy. We're better than okay. And you know what? We were. Things were changing, fast. After meeting Aunt Jackie, it felt like someone had opened a window in a room we didn't know we'd been suffocating in. She started coming around more. Sometimes she'd bring groceries, other times just stories, like how our mom once cut her hair with safety scissors and convinced Jackie to do the same so nobody would notice. For the first time, we had extended family in our lives that didn't come with guilt or threats or fear. But with that light came shadows. One night, after everyone had gone to bed, I got a message on Facebook from an account I didn't recognize. No profile picture, just the name, Marcy W. I stared at it for a long time. It was Mom. Jesse, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just want you to know I got a job. Not much, just cleaning rooms at the motel off 16. But it's a start. I'm trying. I know I messed up. I know I lost the right to call myself your mother. But if there's ever a time you need me, I'll be here. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't know what to say. She wasn't lying. I'd driven by that motel a dozen times, never thinking she might be inside scrubbing toilets, trying to earn her way back into something that looked like redemption. The next day, I told Marla. She's trying, I said. Marla sighed. She's always trying. The question is whether she'll keep trying when things don't go her way. Fair point. But we agreed on something important. Cody deserved the truth. We sat Cody down that weekend. It was sunny outside, but the air felt heavy in the room. Cody, I said, do you remember how we used to live in the RV? He nodded. Yeah, it was really small. And cold. I nodded too. Do you remember why we left? He looked confused. Because it broke down? No, Marla said gently. Because we couldn't live like that anymore. And because Mom wasn't able to take care of us the way we needed. His eyes welled up, but he didn't cry. Is that why we live here now? Yeah, I said. But it's not your fault. None of it was your fault. Then I showed him a picture of David. This is our dad. He didn't leave us. He was pushed away. Cody stared at the photo, then whispered, does he love us? I smiled. More than you know. That night, Cody asked if he could call David Dad. David cried when he heard. Weeks later, we threw a barbecue at the house, our first real gathering. David came. Aunt Jackie came. Even a couple of neighbors we'd met fixing the roof stopped by. The yard was full of laughter and folding chairs and the smell of grilled hot dogs. And then, just when I thought the day couldn't be more surreal, Mom showed up. She didn't walk into the yard, just stood on the sidewalk in clean jeans and a faded red shirt, holding a little Tupperware container. I walked out to meet her. I heard there was a get-together, she said. Thought I'd bring my potato salad. Still your favorite. I nodded. She looked nervous. More than I'd ever seen her. I can go, she said. I just wanted to try. I took the container and looked back at the yard. Marla was watching from the porch. So was Aunt Jackie. And then Cody ran over. He stopped when he saw her. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then he said, hi, Mom, and hugged her. Not long, not tight, but enough. She cried right there on the sidewalk. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know, Cody replied. We didn't invite her to move in. We didn't pretend the past was erased. But we let her sit at the picnic table, have a plate of food, and listen to Cody tell a story about his favorite teacher. And that was enough. For now. After that barbecue, something unexpected happened. Mom didn't disappear. She didn't get everything right either. But this time, she didn't vanish when things got uncomfortable. Once a week, she'd drop by with something small. A homemade pie. A bag of groceries. Once, a stack of books she found at a thrift store that reminded her of Marla. We didn't pretend things were perfect. There were still awkward silences and moments when her guilt hung in the air like humidity before a thunderstorm. But we were building something new. Something cautious. It was Cody who made the real difference. He didn't carry the same anger we did. For him, Mom wasn't a symbol of betrayal. She was just someone he missed. And he made it okay for her to start showing up again. Still, we had rules. She wasn't allowed to stay overnight. She had to call before coming by. And she couldn't ask for money, not once. To her credit, she respected all of it. Meanwhile, our little house was starting to feel like home. We painted the porch swing, built a bookshelf from scrap wood, planted tomatoes in the backyard. David visited every Saturday like clockwork. Sometimes he helped with repairs. Other times he just sat on the porch and listened to Marla talk about her psych class or Cody rant about whatever playground drama happened that week. Then one evening, David pulled me aside. I'm thinking of moving closer, he said. Found a place for sale a few blocks over. Nothing fancy, but I don't want to miss anything else. I didn't know what to say. He saw my hesitation and added, only if you all are okay with it. I'm not trying to replace anything. Just be available. I smiled. We'd like that. He bought the place the following month. Marla got a scholarship that fall, enough to cover books and part of tuition at a 4-year university. She didn't want to leave, but David encouraged her. You're allowed to have a future, he said. You don't have to carry everything. She hugged him tighter than I'd ever seen. When we dropped her off at school, I was the one who cried. You've got this, she said, wiping my cheek. And you've got them now too. Then came the biggest twist of all. A letter arrived one Tuesday afternoon. Thick paper. Official looking. I opened it with shaking hands. It was from a nonprofit organization in the state. One I'd applied to months ago without telling anyone. Dear Jesse Palmer, we're pleased to offer you a full scholarship to our vocational program in energy technology and sustainable systems. Your application stood out due to your personal resilience, community impact, and demonstrated work ethic. I read it 3 times before it sank in. I'd gotten in. I was going to school, not just to work, but to build, to create something more than patched walls and leftover shame. That night, I stood on the porch with David. The air was cool, and the sky was one of those deep blues that only happens right before summer ends. I never thought we'd get here, I said. He handed me a mug of coffee and nodded. Neither did I. But you didn't wait for the world to save you. You carved your own road. I looked at the house, then at him. We carved it, I said. All of us. Later, after everyone had gone to bed, I found that photo Mom gave me a long time ago. The one of us before everything fell apart. And for the first time, I didn't feel the ache in my chest when I looked at it. Because now, we were finally building something worth remembering. Life didn't tie itself up in a perfect bow after that. We still had hard days. Days when the bills were tight, when old habits tried to sneak back in, when memories hit harder than expected. But we weren't surviving anymore. We were living. Cody started middle school that fall. He wore his backpack like a badge of honor, like he knew he'd earned his place there. He was finally just a kid, not a kid with secrets. David's new house became a second home to all of us. Cody biked over every Saturday. They built a tree house together in the backyard, complete with a rope ladder and a no girls allowed sign, which Marla promptly ignored every time she came home for break. As for Mom, she kept showing up. Quietly. Consistently. She never asked for credit. Never tried to rewrite history. She just helped. Sometimes she'd drop off muffins or a handwritten card for Cody. One time she showed up with a new winter coat for him. When I asked where she got the money, she said, "I've been saving." I didn't ask more. I just said thank you. That felt like growth for both of us. Marla graduated 2 years later with honors. We all showed up. Me, Cody, David, even Mom. I don't know what moved me more, seeing Marla walk across that stage or watching Mom clap with her whole heart, even though she wasn't in any of the family photos. She didn't ask to be. She just stood to the side and watched her daughter shine. Sometimes redemption isn't loud. Sometimes it's quiet, steady, and invisible to anyone who isn't looking closely. I finished my program the same year. Got a job with a solar company that paid better than anything I'd imagined back when I was mopping gas station floors. One morning, as I packed up for my first real site visit, Cody slipped a note into my lunch bag. It said, "I'm proud of you, big bro. We got out. We made it. We never sold Grandma's house. We turned it into a home base. Marla comes back on holidays. Mom brings her famous stuffing now. Cody still sleeps in the same room, even though it's covered in soccer posters and old comic books now. David? He's still our steady rock. He never asked for credit either, but he's in every good thing that happened." One day, a few years later, I drove past the old RV. It was still there. Rusted. Abandoned. Hidden behind the same gas station. But it didn't sting anymore. I didn't feel shame, or fear, or bitterness. I just felt grateful. Not for what we went through, but for what we became because of it. Sometimes, family is the wound. Sometimes, it's the bandage. And if you're lucky, really lucky, it becomes the reason you never stop trying.